Cool. First day with new intro. It worked. It seemed to work. So welcome to a podcast. And if you've been following us for a while, that's a little bit of a new look for us. And your host, Stephen Maxted. And today we have the amazing Ajitha, founder and CEO of Management Mastery. Excited to have you on today. We were just chatting before this, and I think it was great timing to dive in. I always say this, that we should just start recording as soon as we get on the call, just to capture some of the moments we before we get in here, and just a great little chat before. I'm going to pass it over to you. Can you give a little background and some context to your story before we get into it? And I start asking all the hard questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Steve, for having me in your podcast. It's a pleasure to be here and to be talking to you, connecting with you and with your audience. I always introduce myself as a corporate dropout because I have been with corporate I was with corporate for over 20 years. Starting my career in sales, hated it, software sales, and hated it totally. Moved to project program management, and then grew up in the corporate ladder and kind of got disillusioned while I was a senior VP in a multinational bank. I was like, there's got to be more to life than 9 to 5. Like, there's got to be more. So right now, since 2019, that's when I quit my corporate job and I reinvented myself into who I am today. It's been a journey, and I'm sure we'll get more into this as a story in itself. But what I do right now is essentially I call myself a leadership coach, but specializing in spiritual intelligence, which is where I believe the world is headed next after IQ and EQ. There's an emphasis coming through in terms of up-leveling our consciousness. And so I'm specializing in bringing spiritual intelligence to the leadership community, both corporate as well as in entrepreneurs. That's what I specialize in.
Awesome. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there too, because that's great. So what was the we'll call it in kind of a sports way, what was the TSN turning point for that corporate experience? I've spent some time in corporate America, we'll say, in some ways, and part of my journey, and I think that is probably very an easy comparable for some folks listening who might be in that space or going through that same thought process. So what was the switch that went for you, thinking about there might be more? Not that there's anything wrong with that journey either, just to say that out loud. There's a lot of really great companies with great, and I've had great experiences too along the way, but I had the same itch that there was maybe more outside of that. So
yeah, I think you beautifully pointed it. It's the itch that starts as a discomfort or the dissonance. I mean, there are so many different words that can describe what one is experiencing. For me, there was always an awareness of being someone more than what others wanted me to be, whether it's my conditioning coming from India, that's my birth country. India, if you're not an engineer or a doctor, you're good for nothing. So I kind of subscribed to it. I became an engineer. I did my MBA, and then I started working my corporate job. And I believe almost all of us reach this point of what others may term as a midlife crisis. There's so many terms that kind of bring that into awareness for us. Personally, for me, it was, I call it actually a spiritual awakening. And that's part of the reason why I'm also picking the path of leadership coaching. It's not any and all leadership coaching. It's very focused on helping people remember the truth of who they are, which is the spirit within them. And that's what prompted me to wake up and ask these deep questions. It's like, who am I? There's got to be more than 9 to 5. What am I here for? What's my purpose? Those big ticket questions that we don't get answers for. Those started popping up right about, when people usually experience midlife crisis. So you can always put, the two together. Yeah. For me, it was that, and in the last decade, I've gone through such humongous shifts, both personally and professionally, to the point I no longer am the same person by any means, not physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I'm not the same person. So that transformation made me realize that, this is what I want to bring to the world.
Very awesome. Do you think there's something there in what you were saying kind of cued a thought that I've had about kind of the inner kid, almost in a way, when you're talking about like spirituality? Because I think that sometimes we do get down these pathways, whether it's a little directed within the, culture, processes, constraints of, whether it be job, relationship, personally, family relationships, that you're kind of this, an expected version of you in those kind of things, but you kind of start to change, and sometimes that doesn't go over so well for many reasons. But is that something that you kind of unpack, or you've had maybe the feeling of, I don't
Oh
mean
yeah,
that.
yeah. You pretty much are headed right in that direction. So if you think about it, everything in nature is already coded to become something. Like an acorn is coded to become an oak tree. We've heard that many times. A mango is only going to become a mango tree. It's not going to become a coconut tree.
Yeah.
Yet, as human beings, we think, or we are conditioned to be like everybody else. Like you are part of a community or a society, and you got look, feel, think, speak like everybody else. And we completely lost our uniqueness that we are bringing, that's so coded within who we are. So as a child, I loved making art. I loved to sing. I loved to dance. I used to role play as a teacher. And yet when I grew up, I had to go deal with engineering mechanics. I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, why do I have to
Right.
learn engineering mechanics? I don't even connect with it. And so to me, that again, the dissonance, and I keep coming back to dissonance because I'm a huge believer in everything being energy, everything having a frequency, and everything being in alignment. So dissonance is where something is not aligned. It's like, ugh, I feel so, I don't feel like I belong here. I don't feel like this is my right place. And in the beginning, because we are so conditioned, it's so easy for us to just do what we are being asked to do or conditioned to do. But the
Yeah.
longer we stay in that path, the more the dissonance starts to, you start to feel it even more and more and more and more. And to me, it is that pivotal point where you no longer can ignore the truth of who you are, what you're coded for. That's the tipping point. That's what propelled me into completely awakening and asking these big, deep questions and actually finding good answers that made me feel like, okay, I kind of know where the heck I'm supposed to be going. So
Awesome. And was there a moment in like a meeting or on a holiday where it was like a big flick of the switch, as you were kind of mentioning, is like the wording there, but was there a moment that you remember when this was like, hey, I need to make change, or change is coming already?
yeah, I wouldn't call it, there is no one such pivotal moment per se, but it's
Yeah.
actually accumulation of years of
Right.
pain. And I
Yeah.
want to zone in on the word pain. The
Okay.
dissonance that we're experiencing ends up getting stored in our emotional self as pain, because what is emotion is energy in motion. When you're not moving your energy to the alignment of who you are, there's so much of stuck pockets of unprocessed emotions, which becomes pain. And when pain is so prominent in your reality, you can't ignore it. You can only ignore it to a point, and then it's like, you got to now pay attention to me because I
Yeah.
need you to look at me. You haven't paid attention to me. So that to me, if there's one thing that really tipped me into stopping, pausing, and making radical changes in my life, that would be the intensity of pain.
No, that makes sense. Do you accumulate the little, it's a death by a thousand cuts, I think, is the one of the
Yeah.
lines I've heard out there. And in many cases, that's the it's not a big thing that tips things over. It's, yeah, the accumulation of things. What was something that was missing that you can look back on? And you're talking about like this pain and kind of accumulation as the key word there. But in that corporate space, like what, like you mentioned, like creativity was a really strong suit of yours when you were younger. What did you start to have, like an outlet or almost like a side hustle within that environment where you started to, okay, I got to start reaching outside of here, that led you then to making the big change, or did it all happen at once for you?
So, music, art, and dance was always part of my journey. Even though I was fully caught up in a 9 to 5 and had very young children as I started my career as well, and juggling between family as expected by the society,
Yeah.
and then a relationship that wasn't aligned, a personal relationship, now my ex husband, as well as the pressures of being a working woman, working mom, and all of this is what everybody expects you to be, like the superwoman that kind of can do everything and show up like I got it all handled. yes, I was putting up a lot of that too. Yet, despite all of that, there was a part of me, that the deeper part of me, that kept wanting me to be creative. So in short, I really paid attention to it. I addressed it. I did not ignore it. So there's a part of me that used to sing and record songs and put it on a blog way back in 2006, when that really wasn't a big thing. I
Yeah.
created a lot of jewelry, handmade jewelry, very intricate jewelry, just put myself in that place because I loved creating. There was no way I could ignore that part of me. So for me, those were always those kept me sane, if you know what I mean, like that outlet, right? It kept me sane, and I was always connected to that part of me that was that creative self. Now, truth be told, I actually loved my job. Once I moved out of sales into project program management, I actually loved my job because it had a lot to do with interacting
Right.
with people. And I'm a people person. I'm such a sucker for just being around people. I wouldn't call myself an extrovert, although people assume me to be so. I need my me time while I can also be with others as necessary, and I enjoy that. So as a program manager, getting work done, delivering, like I was a typical type A, like very high, ambitious, achieving. So I'll get work done, and I get work done just through relationships. And I love working with people. So it was not that my corporate job that I hated it. It's just that the missing piece for me was the freedom. I wanted to do whatever, if I wanted to do a Zentangle or create some jewelry, I don't want to be stuck in a conference call where I'm having to troubleshoot a technical issue for delivery this weekend. It's like I needed that freedom of I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it, not at somebody else's expectation. That was my biggest missing piece of the puzzle. And I was like, yeah, no, this is going to work.
Awesome. No, that's fantastic. I think a lot of folks get in those spots too, where yeah, they switch jobs, things seem better, and I mean, obviously, lots of pressures with being based. What I heard you say there too is like home CEO, which is a huge responsibility. I've had this conversation a few times off screen. Well, I'll have it on screen, but like that's I think sometimes just breezed over. Like, oh, everything's okay at home, and whose ever responsibility that is within the personal relationship, if it is more weighing, in this case, your way, that's tough. You're still showing up and then managing everything on the work side of things. I don't know how you a lot of folks do that, including yourself, because I'm just, one person on my end here, and it's sometimes I think if my head wasn't attached, I might forget it behind some days. So yeah,
So sometimes I wonder myself how my older one is 23 now, my younger one is 16. They've grown. They're nearly adults. So when I look back and I'm like, I don't know how I did it, but I did it.
yeah,
And in many ways, I'm grateful that I had them when I had them to kind of go through this journey, because my transformation, my choices that I've had to make both personally and professionally has grown me so much, where I'm able to hold space for their choices. Like, for example, as much as a rebel that I am, or non-conformist, if you may, of stepping out of corporate mainstream, starting my own business and doing things that anyone from my background or my cultural expectation wouldn't expect me to do. I've done a lot of that. So what that has helped me appreciate is to hold space for my children. My older one decided not to go through his 4-year degree. He got admission in New York University, Shanghai, China. And one semester in, he comes back and says, "This, no disrespect to anybody who's doing a degree in that
yeah,
place. For him, he said he doesn't see value in that piece of paper. So he dropped out. He's been working for over nearly 5 years now with his dad's company, and he's doing amazingly well. He's an extremely brilliant kid. And the younger one is questioning the whole education system and doesn't want to go to school. So I pulled him out of that, and I made him join an online high school, because
cool,
he finds the education system where, again, no disrespect to anybody who's sending their children to the mainstream education system, but my kids didn't find either the college or the high school worth putting their energy in. They would rather be doing something else with their time. So the reason
interesting,
I'm sharing this, Steve, is this. Um, Everybody around us is going to start challenging us to look at things differently. And the choice is going to be ours. Like I was a tiger mom. I was a typical Asian mom who expected my kids to go to school, go to Ivy League, blah, blah, blah. And my kids challenged my belief system as much as I was going through that transformation. So
Totally.
I really feel like the leadership of the world in the future is asking for us to start questioning everything we've assumed to be the norm for us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that, I mean, that's so cool that you are getting that experience from, well, I'll call it coaching in-house, kind of seat that you're in, and getting to experience and have those conversations for pushback. I think that at different times there is different values too that, the education system, I've actually had a very different stage of life, but a close friend of mine, one of their children's having a tough time going to school, and they're kind of debating, at an early stage, like homeschool or maybe, other options there. And I'm, personally kind of a fan of, looking at that as an alternative, because I think that there is tons of opportunity to totally do that. But there's also lots of benefits going to school too. You have, friendships perhaps for life, and just experiences about being around people every day. But also, like that, yeah, that's not for everyone at every stage. And same thing with different experience I've personally had going to pursue a university degree. I thought going in I would become a dentist when I was a kid. My jaw knocked out a bunch of teeth, was always in there, ended up taking an ag degree in sciences. And but then that ended up being one of the best networking tools going into a career in that industry, because then you're familiar with a lot of, we'll call it the early stage players in that space, and you're really well networked right away, so you're kind of off to the races. So if I were to comment on that, like there could be, yeah, like definitely benefits there. But if they're not seeing that, and they're motivated as well, because again, that's not everyone's cup of tea to go do that. Some folks are totally down with going to school and learning, yeah, that method and that, but it's also probably not going to push the limits on what you're learning. There's lots of stuff online now too, right, for even likely the reach of your services. Look at us, we're connecting here today.
So
But
I go back to what I said before about the acorn becoming an oak tree. This is exactly what I was meaning, is that not just because there's an educational system that exists doesn't mean everybody is wired and prepared to be benefiting from it. And that's the part where I feel like we have to start waking up to asking, what is my truth? For each one of us, what is my truth? Is this what I've been told and conditioned, or is there something deeper to it? And I think that needs to be sought after, because otherwise we're going to be like a cogs in a wheel, all of us.
okay, on that topic of that question, so do you dive into this with people, or what would your suggestion be as like a first step to start to unpack that? Because I think some people might get a little lost on that pursuit, perhaps,
Yeah,
even though things
yeah.
are going well. You don't really want to spread yourself out too far there. What would be like a first step on your side of things if you're thinking of unpacking the true path with someone?
I think the first place to start is to ask oneself that question: who would I be if I'm not who others expect me to be?
Dang, good. That's a good one. We can
Yeah, it's a
pause on
very
that
deep,
one.
it's
Yeah,
a
no,
very deep question.
yeah. What were some things that you experienced on perhaps asking yourself that question that you were maybe surprised to find out, or just things that you discovered on your own journey when you were going through that change?
I think for me, I'm grateful in many ways to have tapped into what truly brings me joy very early on in my life. Like I said, as a child, I loved singing. Singing was my very first passion. Then came art. Then came, and dancing, even acting. Like everything on. Think of everything that can be done on stage.
Okay.
That's me. So I sometimes I feel like my home is actually a stage, or
Yeah.
stage is my home. Either ways, right? So I feel, because everything I do, teaching, speaking, dancing, performing, singing, acting, all of this fits doing it on a stage. In fact, I actually walked the New York for the New York Fashion Week in couple of 2022. I was a model in one of the two of the designers in New York Fashion Week, because
Like,
hey, why not? One life, might as well go give it a try. And I participated in two beauty pageants back when COVID hit and everybody was stuck at home. I was like, okay, let me explore something different. So for
cool.
me, it's really about knowing what brings you joy, and
Yeah.
it that is a question that is really worth pursuing to uncover for oneself. And this is part of what I actually help people with being a coach is I look at leadership as first starting with leading oneself. If you are following what other people are expecting of you, you're not even leading yourself. How can you lead somebody else? So it starts with asking that question is what brings me joy? What makes me lose track of time? What is that activity that if I get engaged in, I just don't have a clue the time has passed. Look up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for 4 hours. It felt like 4 minutes. That is you being in your flow state and you knowing that this is what is meant to come through you in this life.
Cool. I like that a lot. Sometimes it happens on here. I look up and the time's flown by, so I feel like I'm kind of checking partly that box on my end of things. And I think an interesting question to throw in here, or part of the discussion would be, but what if it pays really well? What if I'm getting rewarded super great for the thing and it actually accommodates, is there a point of equilibrium where maybe in your personal side, take the loss on the career direction and then fill that gap by, in my case, I like to cycle, buy a bunch of bikes because this job, paid really well. And in my spare time is 100% my time, maybe. Is there a healthy balance that could be seen staying in that job that's maybe rare, but,
So that is always a question that I get asked, and I asked myself too, right? And I wanna go straight up and say something that's gonna may not make a lot of people happy, which is the very aspect of, will, what if what I'm doing pays me well, but I'm not too happy? Can I still put a leg in there and then keep another leg in the in my passion bucket? So kind of get best of both worlds. And I'm going to call out something very, very deeply socialized or conditioned in the operating system, leadership operating system, is somewhere you believe that you cannot make the same wealth that you make with your job doing what you love. That's just a belief. That's a conditioned belief that you've been holding on to. And I'm going to challenge you about that. I will challenge you because you're looking at someone who did that double track for a while before the full leap was taken. And I realized this, that I was only double tracking because of that very belief that, oh, what if I don't make the same amount of money?
Yep.
What if, right? We are spending so much energy on what if that could go wrong rather than asking the opposite is, what if it could go right? What if I can make the same amount of money doing what I absolutely love? Or why same? Why not more? We never ask these questions because we're not trained to, we're not conditioned to. It's scary. It is scary to explore those possibilities. And this is why I love Marianne Williamson's quote, which says that we're not afraid of our failure or our darkness. We are truly afraid of the power we carry within. The minute we connect with that power, we're going to be so awesome, so lit up, that we are afraid of the true power that we carry. That's why we're all playing it small, playing it safe, playing it invisible, because, hey, I'm scared of my power. We never say that though.
That is very interesting. I love that statement, by the way, too. And part of that actually genuinely came from thoughts that I've had, but also conversations recently when folks reach out to me, putting yourself out there and running things like this on the podcast and running other companies. It's inspiring others, but also they don't know where to jump off their current track, and it's literally a very genuine debate in my opinion. But I totally hear what you're saying too, and I definitely agree. But it's tough to get someone to think about that if they're safe is here and what if is over here.
Again, I think it's also because our operating system is on an either or paradigm. I can either be safe or I can be thriving. It's not either or. You will need both because your subconscious is wired for survival. It's going to freak out if you all of a sudden do something with no planning or no thinking behind it, right? So it's not either or. You are always, as a leader, and I love this statement by Bob Anderson, who's written the book on mastering leadership. He talks about the journey of a leader is always, balancing the core tension between safety and purpose. Always.
That's good.
It is going to be that core tension. It's not like, oh, I'm so safe. He says there is no safe way to be success. There's no safe way to success, or there's something he says. I lost the. quote, but essentially he says that it's not one or the other, and you're going to have to navigate this tension behind safety. Oh, there's no safe way to be great, and there's no great way to be safe.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was thinking it was something along the line of, yeah, exactly that, where it's, there is always
There's no safe way to be great. There's no great way to be safe. So it's like you got to have the greatness and the safety in, like, it's two hands. It's not one or the other, right? Again, this is the paradigm. I feel like we're so at the midst of this place, Steve, where we are all learning to go to shift out of the either or to the both and paradigm. You can have safety and thrive. You can take care of your bills and enjoy what you do and be prosperous. That's the both and paradigm we're going towards.
Oh, I like all of that. Now I've even forgotten what the question, the next thing I was going to immediately was. I'm so yeah, caught up in that. But I would agree, and just start by saying this is like there is that pendulum of risk and risk tolerance over time, because I think a lot of folks who even start things on, we'll call it more like the small bit, they could be big businesses, but a lot of folks start to kind of peter away at a certain point, and in my opinion, they really are just getting started. It's I've seen this a couple of times, and it was mentioned on a post of some good friends of mine who are in this chocolate business out in Montreal, and they're saying, as soon as you start looking at like a 10-year horizon, more than you are looking at, just 1 year or maybe at 3 years out, like if it doesn't work by then, hey, I got to go back to something else. But 3 years in, people just start calling you because they remembered that you do the thing that you said you were doing 3 years ago. Like there's a very lag curve, even if you push out a lot of marketing behind it. It does take time to do some of those things. Oh, that was my question. What was year one of going out on your own like, and what was that experience for you?
So I'm going to phrase it in two ways, only because you have already alluded to people keeping one leg on the business and another leg in the job bucket. So that started, I think, back in 2018 or 17 for me, where I was already certified. So my journey of spiritual awakening led me to a certain set of healing modalities that I leveraged for myself. And then I absolutely was amazed at the transformation and decided to get certified in them. So 2017, 18 is when I started practicing with other people. Like I started giving sessions and, doing those. My first 30-minute or an hour-long session was $35. I still remember that. And I still have the check stuck in front of here on the wall in front of me, because I never want to forget what it took to get started in business, where you are trading something you are not graduated in, you have a certificate, but that's not where you spent your 4-year degree and 2-year MBA and all of that. I still remember the special feeling that I had with it. So from 2017 till, even though I quit my full-time job in 2019, I had joined as a part-time trainer, corporate trainer with an organization. So that was taking care of the bills. I really didn't fully step into entrepreneurship in its no safety net perspective since January of 2023. January 2023 is when I was like, no safety net, universe, I have made a commitment, decided, jumping with all feet, legs, head, tail, all of that in. Now you've got to make this work for me. So in many ways, I will say that this journey has helped me appreciate both the pros and cons of having one leg here and there, because there is something paying the bills. Some of us don't give the best to the business that we want to build, because hey, take it easy, right? Take it easy. Don't have to do this or that. And also, since stepping fully into doing just what I love, and this is all I did or I still do in 2023 to now, it has also made me realize that it's not as scary as I thought it would be. Were there times where I was freaking out? Heck yes, absolutely. Right? And this is where I want to go back to reminding the deeper aspect, is that the journey of entrepreneurship, or even following our purpose, is going to help us really grow as individuals. It's going to make us truly deeply develop the quality of faith and trust. It's a very different energy of faith when you have a paycheck coming every 2 weeks. It's like, yeah, it's coming. You don't question. You don't need to have faith that the paycheck is going to come. You don't need to trust that the paycheck is going to come, because, hey, you have a job. And you know what happens when people get fired or unexpectedly from their job? That very thing they took for granted, the faith and the trust, gets shaken. And
Yeah.
then their whole world is like, it's crazy. I've helped so many leaders. In fact, 2023, when I started my full-time leadership coaching career, I was helping leaders transition to their next roles. And I could see how, losing their job was literally shaking their entire foundation
Yeah.
because they were not ready for the testing of the trust and the faith in their own operating system. So
Yeah.
to me, the way I see anything that is unfolding in your reality is it's constantly asking you to grow, because
Yes.
everything in nature is wired to grow. If you're not growing, then you're decaying, period. You don't ever stand still. You just don't. That's not the nature. Nature doesn't keep anything still. You are either growing or you're decaying. So the question is, if you're not growing with what is happening in your reality, then what exactly is going on in your operating system? How are you going to make the best of what is happening in your reality? So that's what I always believe in asking this question: how is this happening for me rather than why is this happening to me?
Right.
Because if you ask why is this happening to me, you are in a victim consciousness, as if somebody is doing something negative or afflicting to you. Instead, when we flip the narrative and ask a better question, I always say the one quality that you can learn as a leader is know how to ask better questions, and not just to others, but even to yourself. And so the question of how is this happening for me is actually helping us flip the problem into inherently believing there is a solution within it.
That's
So
awesome.
that is the question I had to ask many, many times when my savings this year has been brutal for my business. I'll be totally honest. My savings had dropped down quite a bit because
Yeah.
I was taking so many risks. I was investing all that I made in 2023 back into the business and
Right.
dabbling with many aspects. I'm like, then I had to take a step back and go within and ask, okay, what exactly are you doing here? What is
Right.
it teaching you? How are you growing? Oh, now I get it. So the journey of anything as a leader is going to be constantly going within, meaning
Yeah.
your inner game. How are you playing your inner game? Because your inner game determines your outer game.
Absolutely. Yes. Looking within, and I totally agree. I think that's a great point of reflection too. And to your point there, I did have kind of something now a couple of times in my career where either mergers or companies shut down office and stuff. And it's the first time it happened, I was quite surprised, to say the least. But then, unfortunately or fortunately, as it happened, at different points, and not really fault, in terms of like offices closing down, someone else's mismanagement in the nicest way. But it was kind of more prepared. I was like, okay, like everything's gonna be fine. It was kind of funny to have that. And I think I am very grateful for that happening at an early stage in the career. Because I've seen it happen with folks that are further on and they're, 20, 30 years and their packages look a lot different, or if you are even getting a package and, to probably some of the people that you were discussing those with, like that can be super traumatic because most of your identity is tied to that brand,
That
frankly, you
that is
know.
the identity. There's
Yeah.
such deep-rooted identity, and this is what I help in my program where I coach leaders on is uncovering their leadership identity hook that they are caught into, because of which everything that is happening in their reality is shaking them, making them reactive as a leader rather than creative, right?
Yeah.
So it's uncovering that identity, because if you are held by an identity, I am what I do, I am who others think I am my ideas, then what happens if all of this or any of this gets shaken? Then you're like, I don't know who I am. So there you go.
Yeah, no, it definitely happened, and then there's points of even reflection along, personal journeys that I talk with folks. It's tough to not be attached to it. I mean, it's almost part of some of the, we'll call it like the rah-rah of being within companies too. You become part of that culture, and that's what makes things flow really well and become successful. So it's like a positive, but kind of a negative that could come out of, that attachment to that, and you become, I don't know how many people you've chatted with too, and on the journey where they're so attached to the business and what the business is doing. And it's sometimes when I hear folks say that now, I'm like, well, it's not your business. Like, unless it is, I guess. But I'm like, hey, like, make sure you're like, almost want to whisper to them, be like, hey, make sure, you do something outside of work. it's tricky. It's hard to balance. What would your advice be to someone in that space, or to, or if they're transitioning out of it, to separate the two and rediscover that purpose piece there?
Yeah, I think going back to the same question that we talked about, which is who would I be or what would I be doing? Who would I be is more a being question. What would I do is more a doing question, right? It's both. Being is feminine, doing is masculine. We need both in our lives. It's not either or. Again, it's not either or. And we
Yeah.
are, as a society, we are so skewed. Again, patriarchal society, no fault of anybody. We just happen to be in this point in time where the society is skewed towards patriarchy, which is all about doing, doing, doing. If you're not doing anything, you are lazy. You're good for nothing. It's a programming. So I want to bring awareness that it's so important for each of us as leaders to ask ourselves, who would I be if I'm not who others or expect me to be or who they want me to be? And what would I be doing with my time and my gifts and my talent in this world, in this limited time that I have in this beautiful planet called Earth? What would I be doing that would bring me joy? Because guess what? When I'm joyful, without a question, the world is receiving that joy without a question, because I'm lifting the frequency of the planet just by my joy. That's the best gift I can give to anybody. So these two questions are pivotal for us to uncover the true identity deep within, which again is, who am I really? Who am I really? And this is where I tie it back to my specialization in leadership coaching, is who you are is way beyond this time and space. Who you are is way beyond this avatar, this bodysuit that you're wearing, this name that you have, the property that you hold, the money, the net worth. It's way beyond all of that. And when you take, so there are some things, Steve, in life that you cannot explain simply by looking at it in the here and now, just this lifetime perspective. So many things just don't make any sense when you look at it as just in this lifetime. But when you take a broader, bigger perspective, what if, again, I'm not proposing that everybody should adopt this. I'm asking a question worth contemplating, which is, what if you are not a human being having a spiritual experience off and on, where you're deeply connected to nature or music or something higher power than you are? What if you are actually a spiritual being having a human experience? What would that mean to you? How would that change who you are and what you do?
Interesting. I'm so dialed into this style of conversation. Some people, it may not hit home right away. I'm so into this that you're bringing this up, and I think it might take some people, as the word that you're using before too, a certain level of like pain, or like getting to that pain tolerance point to want to explore something like this too. Just stating that out loud, this is just my thoughts on it. But until you've kind of had that little bit of rough patch or that pain point, you might be comfortable enough where you're not willing to, look outside of that thing to make this happen. And then you hit that point, and then we need to call you immediately for services.
I believe that the planet is going through a huge consciousness shift right now, and a lot more people. I had this awakening startup almost a decade ago, but I know for a fact now, the fact that we have so many solar flares coming through this year alone, the fact that we can see northern lights, aurora borealis in random places that you have never heard of seeing these things. Like I had that happen where I live in the DMV area in Virginia. You're hearing all of these things, and the human resonance is shifting. Like the planet is shifting. More and more people are being pushed to wake up, to ask these bigger questions. And I believe those that are meant to hear this conversation between us are going to find it. They're going to hear it, and something's going to shift for them. And that is just the order of the nature. We don't have to make stuff happen with this. It's going to happen as it's meant to.
Interesting. No, I love that. I do feel that a little bit too. Do you think we've cycled through this thought process before, as a Earth, let's call it?
I would say so. Yes. I'm given the nature of my specialty, I read a lot. I read a lot of books, and I'm a curious explorer of information, and I always am taking what resonates, discarding what doesn't. And I always suggest that in any training, anything that I do as a speaking gig or any facilitation, I always tell people, take what resonates, discard the rest, because resonance is all about, what are you ready to receive at this time, right?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, yeah, I believe we've been at this place of cycling through an extreme amount of what you call as toxicity and darkness, and it's a cycle where we are learning how to connect back to the truth of who we are. The truth of who we are is, again, I'm going to talk science, not so much spirituality. Everybody knows everything is energy. Everybody knows everything is energy. Nobody debates that point. So if
Yeah.
everything is energy, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So you are you're transformed from some other form of energy. You, me, all of us.
Yeah.
And if we are all energy, which are transformed from some form of energy, then there is a certain level of vibrational frequency to this energy being. And either that can be really dense, which is low frequency, or really high, which is high frequency, right?
Yeah.
Those are spectrums or somewhere in between. It's not, again, not black or white. And to
Right.
me, the frequency, the dominant frequency of where the planet is right now is because of all the stuff we have done as humanity collectively over the years has just made our planet so toxic. Not just in the physical sense, but even the emotional sense, the vibrational sense. It's become so dense, so dense, so dense.
Yeah. This is maybe a very lighter side of that, but even I think, I mean, it's a lot of the environment that you're in. We didn't really dive too much into that, but there's the environment kind of being even, I had a cold a couple weeks ago. I was knocked out basically on my couch, and just, the regular things you're tired, you're sore, you're sweaty, whatever. And I have Netflix on, just kind of scrolling for whatever. That's, probably not the best thing, but I just wanted some noise on in the room. And I was looking for something to be more positive. And I got talking with a friend about this recently too. And I was like, there was not a lot of options. There was like not a lot on there actually. And sorry, Netflix. And I scanned through the other apps too, and it was just, I don't know. I really couldn't search and find it. I had to almost like look back, to other stuff. It was a lot of
The
drama.
mainstream media is feeding more into the lower frequency. That's the fear vibration, right? The fear
Yeah,
vibration. The mainstream media is filled with it. Filled with
yeah,
it. You can't go to mainstream media to get anything positive, unfortunately.
yeah,
And to me, this is why we have YouTube, where there are creators who are able to put stuff that is more uplifting, more
yeah,
hopeful, more love-centered, purpose-centered. And if, again, just a side recommendation is look for the channel called Gaia. I think it's on Amazon Prime, if I'm not wrong. They have a lot of these fun, if you're curious and want to go look in the history of what has happened, maybe in Egypt or some other civilization. It's a fun brain candy kind of shows. And then
yeah,
there are some which are more sacred geometry, and again, the geek in me loves to watch sacred geometry shows. So you can pick something that is more uplifting and aligned for you from those networks.
yeah,
But clearly, where we are, the planetary vibrational frequency is that the density has become so much that we can't continue this way. It's got to shift. And
yeah,
that's where a lot of people are being, there's so much light coming into the planet right now that's making people have these, eureka, this awakening moments, asking these deeper questions. And
yeah,
when you start exploring, when they start exploring it, just like how I did a decade ago, they're going to find, because again, we are all coded with the truth of who we are. It's waiting to be remembered at the right time. So it's about just remembering that so that we can start to shift the planetary frequency. That to me is the leadership that we are here to offer to this planet and to others.
very cool. No, I like that a lot. It definitely could be right there, right? With more things being lighter, things are not just perhaps happening for no particular reason at all. It's part of the cycle,
Yeah.
and we are part of a bigger energy out there. And you pick that up off people too, though. I think just to say this,
Yeah.
whether it be like you walk in I don't know, like you're and we're aware of this and we're talking about it today, but I think someone who's listening, and next time you're in a room, just kind of gauge it. Or if you have that feeling, a lot of time I have moments of just trusting the gut in conversation in business or personal, and understanding maybe someone was just having an off day, but most of the time you're pretty on about your assumption about is this a good, move forward in, what, like I said, work or personal relationship, or who your friends are, who you're around, both environment, as kind of mentioned there, is very
Mhm.
important, like physically, but also, mentally, and who those conversations are you're having. Does that need adjusting
Yeah.
within stuff? People outgrow relationships, the friend space, and I've seen that lots of times. There's no negative to, hopefully, folks moving on, or, or physically moving, somewhere else. You usually get a little harder to stay in touch with to the same degree. But I think there's lots there to
That's
unpack.
the shift in the vibrational frequency. So let's say, Steve, you invest in growing yourself and shifting how you think and feel, and because it's a cycle. What you believe, what you think, what you feel, how you act
Yeah.
leads back to reinforcing a belief. It's a cycle, right? So when you start shifting the belief system, which is what I call the operating system, inner operating system, your frequency changes. You're not going to have the same people around you anymore. That's why people grow apart, friendships grow apart. You no longer are resonating on the same frequency. Again, I'll keep talking the energy lingo, right? You
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
longer have the same frequency to be having those people around you. And then you start attracting newer people around you because you're shifting your frequency.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's very apparent too, I think, within meetings, or people who are, it's not like attracted in like a flirty way necessarily, how this may sound, but sometimes you just find certain folks are kind of the magnet in the room,
Yeah.
conversation, or where the kind of like the focus is, whether it be like, happens to be maybe positioning some of the time in terms of like the layout of, yeah, said room or whatever it is. But there are some folks that certainly naturally have that, or they are, yeah, like you said, thinking maybe a little, their optics are a little bit different, and they're just putting that out there. And that's very, we seem to gravitate towards that in a way. So yeah, that's
Absolutely.
very interesting. I've heard that before about like where dogs are like like really, like they pick up on that stuff, where they'll like run, like if someone's really high frequency, like dogs will want to hang around and
Animals
meet
are
them.
very, very in tune with the energy. Animals are really, really in tune because they're actually healers. Many, if not all animals are healers, and they actually help us heal a lot of our emotional stuff just by being around us. And I say that because they can sense fear very, very quickly, especially dogs. They can sense fear. So
Yeah. Do you have any pets?
I used to. I grew up in a house full of cats.
A cat. Okay. Okay. Cats was the thing. Yeah. No, I have a dog on my end. I was just gonna, yeah, make reference to, or ask you about that, but I will maybe just give a quick example. But yeah, if I'm having a off day or stress day, like I've got this big dog. He is not a lap dog, but he thinks he needs to be if if he's picking up like the stress, and I'm not always aware that I might be carrying that either. Running business, doing things, it's has its moments, but he's certainly in tune with with that aspect of things. So like absolutely, and I'm sure other animals share that. It's on the algorithm heavy with dogs, so that's something that I see often on the positive side of social media, and taking in that
Yeah.
energy. So no, it's fantastic. Ajitha, is there anything else that we should know about, or where to find you online if someone wants to connect? We'll have it in the bios and stuff, but just to
Mhm.
say it out loud here for the listener.
Absolutely. Yeah, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. This is my full name as it appears, Ajitha Srinivasan. You can search, and that's my profile. You're happy to connect on LinkedIn, and there's a link for them to book a call with me if they're interested to work with me in through any of my programs. Absolutely.
Awesome. That sounds great. We'll make sure to include that too in the bio, in everywhere we have this on our website, if listeners looking for that. So this is awesome. Thanks so much for making time today. I think this was great, and we were really just scratching the surface on things here. But I think this was a really great conversation today, and thanks again for making time to be on with us.
It's absolutely it's absolutely my pleasure to be here. And as you can tell, I can go on and on. So I'm glad we have a time limit and we get through within that. So thank you so very much, Steve, for having me on. And this was, I feel so fulfilled having this conversation with you.
Likewise, I look forward to staying connected.
Yes.
So awesome.